Hey guys, so this is OV Transport Guy episode 3. So, besides the type of work that I do in terms of transporting, let me kind of give some knowledge real quick on some of the younger people that I pick up. Because one thing about our service, yes, we do deal with, seniors, special needs indefinitely. But I love picking up students, young people, especially if they are a little bit more socially active in terms of talking and stuff. And it gives me the opportunity to, pass some knowledge on to them, see kind of what their future plans are, what they got going for them, stuff like that. So I like the idea of being able to talk with them, pick their brains for a minute, things of that nature. And so I had an individual, for the sake of discussion, I won't mention his name, but I ran into this young man, and interesting thing about it, he has all these ideas on what he wants to do in terms of his business that he's doing. Long story short, he's the one doing all the operations. He took the idea from another job. Basically, he's into landscaping, something of that nature. So basically, he says that he can do all the stuff. He doesn't really get the help he needs. And him and his partner are actually doing side jobs and stuff like that. But, he's the one that's doing all the work. And so he explained it to me. And I was like, okay, cool, that works. So then my question becomes, okay, so when are you going to make it official? He really couldn't give me a real good answer on that. And basically, I mean, it was this. Have you given your business a name? Have you done anything with an LLC? Do you have a business location? Simple stuff like that. I didn't want to overload his mind too much. And really, all he kept saying was, he's getting to that. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about that. A hint of procrastination. And so I finally asked him, okay, so what do you really want to do? And he's like, well, this is what I really want to do, but I've got, a wife and a child. Okay. And I understand that, but at the same time, business wise, since we're talking about business, what do you plan on doing? And so he couldn't give me a definite answer, right? So I said, okay, based on what you're telling me right now, you have this grand scheme idea. Obviously, you've gotten a few clients. I said, so let me help you a little bit how this works. I said, first thing you need to do, you need to cut yourself off. And folks, please hear me on this. This is Entrepreneur 101. You got to cut yourself off from folks that is holding you down, that's pulling you back, that's giving you nothing but negative feed. Anything they have to say doesn't help you, doesn't help what you're trying to do. And most often times, they may even be jealous for you. Cut off your friends, ones that is not doing anything in your life to help you improve and always pulling you down. I said, and this could even go on with family. I'm not saying you got to cut them off forever, but man, if you're trying to do something and they're in the way, they need to move out the way, or you need to remove yourself from them rather. And I said, I know this is something that unfortunately a lot of folks don't want to do, because I say this is family, they raised me, they taught me right, all that stuff. And there's and I get that. And that's why I say remove yourself so there's a level of respect, right? You don't want to dishonor your parents or your family, but you do occasionally need to do what I call checking. Now, there's a right way of doing that, and there's the wrong way. That's why I say remove yourself. You don't have to offend them, but you do need to let them know, okay, you're not really feeding into me what I need. So, I'm just going to handle my business elsewhere. It can be something said like that. Now, folks, if they're going to get upset at you, they're going to get upset, but at least you're respectful about it. I always handle situations like that carefully. That's why I say remove yourself, but you don't necessarily have to cut them off, in that sense. Okay. And so basically, I told him that, and he was feeling what I was saying. And I offered him some other advice too. Okay, like, look, business name, you need to make that happen. I said, and you need to move on these things and stop being the king of procrastination. And I use this on myself because there are times that I do procrastinate. Stop procrastinating. Do what you're going to do while you have the time to do it. Meaning, if you're thinking of an idea, go ahead and work it out. Don't sit there and wait, because all that's going to happen is somebody else is going to slip in behind you and take the idea or come up with something similar and completely push you out. Those are things you need to work out first. Secondly, and most importantly, start working on your mind. You know what I'm saying? Meaning this, your mind needs to come out of this mentality that I can't do it. It could be hood, thug life, whatever. You need to push that to the side. Start making your mind on a business aspect. How you gonna work this process out? Moving things that do not matter right now, whatever that looks like. If it's not adding value, if it's keeping you down, if it's not pushing you ahead to what you need to do, then you need to get rid of it. It serves absolutely no purpose whatsoever. So these are things you need to consider. So in the few minutes, and I had approximately about 10 minutes to talk to him. So I gave him, a few videos for him to check out in terms of business aspect, you know. And of course, obviously I'm a God-fearing man, so I'm going to do this from a biblical perspective. Because again, unfortunately, you know, I have found that a lot of people that are really negative, and it shouldn't even be the case, that don't believe in the power of wealth and transformation, a lot of times comes from within the church, and that is totally what shouldn't happen. As a matter of fact, as a believer in Christ, you ought to be representing. You know what I'm saying? And yet you don't see that. So I have to explain that to him. You know what I'm saying? To where I'm like, look, dude, this is what you need to do. Here are a few steps. Let me give you this video. Write down these names here for you to check out for yourself, because I don't want you just to depend on what I'm saying is accurate. Look at the evidence for yourself and then examine it and apply it. You know what I'm saying? And so he took it. Needless to say, that conversation, the boy, he was so excited. He was like, man, I've never had anybody talk to me like this, that put it in perspective. You know what I'm saying? And so he was excited. Me, he had all this energy and stuff like that. And that's cool. I said, now use that energy and apply it to what you need to do. And so he left out, you know, with more enthusiasm, more energy, more positive, you know what I'm saying? And he got some word into him as well. And that's exactly what I want to do. And that's the benefit of when I'm driving around, that I'm putting something into people that they may be missing or they don't have, even if it's just for a few minutes. There are times that I may not even be able to say anything to them because they're so focused on whatever it is that they're doing. You know what I'm saying? But if they come at least into the vehicle, they're going to be, you know, there's going to be a level of comfort, and that's what one of the things that I offer. So all that to say this: when you're driving people around, whatever transportation that you're doing, sometimes meeting needs doesn't necessarily always have to be you driving. Sometimes it can be just an encouraging word. You know what I'm saying? Especially to the younger generation that desperately needs it, because a lot of them are socially awkward. They don't know how to hold a conversation. Perhaps, maybe the few minutes that you're there, you can make a difference and put an impact on our life. So look at what you're doing in terms of driving as an opportunity to reach the minds of the young people. Because unfortunately, they're in this world, but they haven't lived long enough or been around enough situations to where, hey, now's the time to plant and to move. Open up avenue of resources. They're not thinking like this. Most of them are thinking about just, hey, 9 to 5 job. Hey, this is what I got to do, you know. And your thinking has to be further along with that. So if I can feed something into them that's positive, that works, then that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So that's exactly what, I offer to anybody that's riding a car. And this isn't just for the younger generation, because unfortunately, and what I'm getting ready to say probably gonna offend some folks, right? You have old fools too. I've seen old cats, both men and women, do some dumb stuff, say some dumb stuff while being in a vehicle. And I'm like, man, you gotta know better, dude. Yeah, I be thinking about it or say it, but I'll be like, bro, you like ancient older than I am, man. You don't know that? Or why would you say something like that? But instead of saying that, believe me, it's in my mind. I'm like, okay, this person has said this or said that. What can I do to impact their thinking, to get them to have a new thought? So let's put something out there. And sometimes it can be just a little bit of something. And that little bit of something can go a long ways, especially if it happens to be a writer that you end up picking up again. So you see how that works. So in other words, your actions, what you do, what you say, how you respond, it can impact somebody, you know. So now that person leaving that vehicle can leave on a more positive side, on a more spiritual side of things. On, hey, let me not be passive, but let me push forward to what I need to do. And when we're able to do that, there's much change for the better that can be done. Okay, so that's everything from your boy, OV, the transportation guy. Look at me next time. I got some more stuff for you. Baby, I'm just getting started. And I'll talk to you guys later. Peace. Bye for now.